Thanks for tuning in. My name is Candace Stevens. I'm a yoga teacher here at Yoga Home. I also have a background in clinical psychology. I have a master's in clinical and counseling psychology. Spent a lot of time working in trauma therapy specifically. So one of my big passions in life is combining yoga and mental health. And one of the most prevalent things I see is anxiety. And a lot of people deal with it. And yoga is a really great way to help you not just deal with it, but start to transform it. One thing I think that's important to distinguish between is anxiety and fear. So fear is a response based in the moment where you're responding to some sort of danger or stimuli where you have to react to save yourself. Anxiety is future-based. It's usually about avoiding a potential threat or speculating about how to avoid that threat. So the practice of yoga is about being present in the moment to whatever we're doing. We can use that present-centered awareness to help us get out of speculative, anxious patterns of thought, or in yoga we might call them samskaras. In anxiety is attachment, or attaching to a certain outcome. So as we go through these restorative postures, I would say, if you're doing this at home, don't expect one result or another, because that's going to cause more speculation and more anxiety. Rather, treat this as kind of an experiment and just allow yourself to be curious about what's happening and to be diving more into the moment. And in that practice of diving into what's happening, you get away from the fear and worry about what could happen, what might happen, what should happen. It frees you from it. So I invite you to really search for different things to notice about your experience. So to really help address anxiety, we can use yoga to provide an embodied experience of relaxation. So rather than just watching TV where we still have lots of stimuli, or running and getting the energy out, which is still great and very useful, by doing restorative yoga, we can retrain the brain to be more present and calm and activate our parasympathetic nervous system, is known as the rest and digest rather than the fight or flight. And it helps slow the heart rate, increases the rate of your digestion, all kinds of things like that that are not possible when we have to run from danger. Your immune system actually increases its functionality, so you're more likely to be healthy if you are calm and less stressed. As we know, stress is related to so many illnesses as a catalyst to bringing them on. So let's work on it. Let's see what we can do. So what we're going to be doing today is 2 restorative postures. Ideally, you will have a bolster, which tends to be very firm, a blanket or 2, yoga blanket, but I guess any blanket will really work, and then yoga blocks, but not for what we're doing today. These postures are taken from Yoga for Emotional Balance, which is written by Bo Forbes. She's a PsyD and also a yoga teacher, and she does a whole thing with mind-body training. She's based out of Boston. This is a really great book. I highly recommend it. Work with anxiety. One thing that really helps out is folding forward. So you are rounding and letting go of external stimuli, allowing yourself to turn inward a little more. Sometimes with anxiety, our mind can be so all over the place that even just having a lot of extra light can affect it. So in your own practice, even if you're not doing these kinds of restorative poses, sometimes a simple forward fold can really help do that. One thing to keep in mind is that when we try to still our minds, still our bodies, our brain will create its own content. So very often when we begin to slow down, our brain accelerates. But our brain will accelerate before it slows down. So if you start to feel hopeless, like your brain is broken and it'll never stop, it will, I promise. It totally does. But eventually. So again, that's why it's so important to not hold that attachment to it working the first time or the second time, because you'll get frustrated. It's a process. Just let yourself see what's happening. So with that being said, this is Beth, and she is amazing for being willing to do this. Thank you for coming today. The first pose we're going to be doing is a reclining twist. So what Beth is doing, we'll move this out of the way for a second, is lining her hip up with her bolster. Her legs will be open, so this is a 90-degree angle right now. We're turning it a little bit wider, making it more obtuse, I guess we would say, about 110 degrees. She's going to bend her knees and kind of stack them here, maintaining that angle. And then we're going to bring this blanket, which is folded a couple times just across the calves to decompress in the hip. She's going to take her hands and frame out the bolster. So bring them to the side of the bolster, yeah. inside.
Oh, oops, my bad.
No, it's fine. No, you're totally fine. Here, bring the left hand to the outside of the bolster. There it is. So then you're lifting in your chest. You're creating a little bit more length, and then extending your belly across this. Yes, exactly. And then letting your head come down, turning it to one side. And so here we allow time to settle into the posture. It's really important in restorative to allow yourself to find comfort and embody it. Because if you're uncomfortable and you're sitting with tension, that's what you're going to be sitting with for 10 minutes, laying with for 10 minutes. So we want to find that relaxation first, whatever it is, whatever you need to do. So if you have to wiggle around and shift, that's great. If your mind is moving really fast here, I would recommend lengthening your exhale, so having your breath be at a 1-to-2 ratio if possible. So maybe inhaling for 3, exhaling for 6. But if that kind of thing makes it more nerve-wracking or more frustrating, just try to let your exhale be a little longer. And what that will do is help stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system and bring about that sense of calming and cooling. So for this next pose, it's called face down relaxation pose. It requires a little bit of a different folding. So right now I have a yoga blanket, standard yoga blanket, folded in half, and we're going to fold it in half 2 more times lengthwise. We'll do it 1 and 2. So it becomes what I like to call a blanket snake, but I don't think that's the official term. What we're going to do. Beth is going to take her hands, and I'll do it too. Find the top of her hip bones and the bottom of her rib cage. So it's actually kind of a small space. Then what she's going to do, and we'll put this on the mat in a second, is to line up the bottom of her hips with the top of her hips with the bottom of the blanket and the bottom of her ribs with the top of the blanket. So we'll bring it across the mat. And we'll measure that out. It kind of requires a little bit of shimmying and finagling again. Don't be ashamed to search for that spot that feels right, because if it's not the right spot, it might be very uncomfortable for your back. How do you feel right now? Is that good? Mm-hmm. So you have the option to stay here like this, or if you don't have any issues with claustrophobia or a sense of being kind of held, you can wrap the blanket around you. And this can be very soothing. It can feel like being held, and having a little bit of weight on you is very grounding when you are feeling anxious and jittery and all over the place. It's like someone placing a soft and gentle hand on you. So you'll keep your arms however feels comfortable for you. Let your weight sink into the blanket. And then once again, explore what's going on in your mind, and if it's moving super fast, slow your exhalations. Let your body soften. And breathe. Comes down to just breathing. Be patient with yourself. Notice if there's any judgmental thoughts that come up. You know, a lot of it's a story. Know that you're not your thoughts, and that's, I think, something that is very common in anxiety, is to think that you are your anxious thoughts or what's happening in your mind. You aren't. You're so much more than that. And this is the practice of becoming the witness and seeing these things happen. Checking out yoga for anxiety, and this is just scratching the surface. Go yoga home. Thanks, Beth. Oh my God, thank you, Beth. Thanks, Beth, for being an amazing yoga mama.